All right, and with that, it is 5:05. We have quorum, so I'm going to call this meeting to order for S&A Committee. For point of attendance, I see myself, Alice Williams, Evelyn Rowan, Bjorn, and Brandon. And then we have our advisors, Joey and Jessica. And then a public member, Miss Lola. And then we need to approve the agenda from last week's meeting. So I am opening the floor to a motion to approve that.
Agenda for this week's meeting.
Yes. Agenda, we need to approve this week's meeting, so I'm opening the floor for that motion. Bjorn?
So moved.
I'll second.
Awesome. Thank you, Evelyn. And then we need to approve minutes from our meeting on 2/16.
So moved.
Seconded.
Awesome. Moved by Evelyn, seconded by Brandon, I think it was. And then we're going to open the floor to public comment. If anybody would like to make public comments, now is a wonderful time. Joey.
Yeah, so the only public comment is mostly to give you all an update. Since this was a special meeting, we're foregoing the advisor reports, the communications received. We do have pieces, but those will come up next week.
Okay.
This is really just to do, again, public comment because it's a public meeting. So to give any ability for individuals to provide that. But otherwise, we're just going to do the annual reports, another chance for public comment, and then we'll adjourn. We do have a couple items and communications that we'll share next week, though.
Awesome. So then we can just go straight into our old business of the base funding annual reports. Do we have somebody that can share that on their screen? I see nodding from Joey.
Yes, let me pull it up 1 second, then I'll share my screen.
Cool.
Let me do this because I have them all on here, but okay. And then because I only have the one screen because we're starting with Museum of Culture, correct? Okay. So I'll move this here. I think these are slightly out of order because that would be too easy when I opened them all. Okay, I'm going to do this. It's going to show you all for a minute, and then I'll pull up just that. There we go. And I will try and make this larger because that is insanely tiny. And so again, these are, I mean, for you all, but also for the recording, these are all available on the S&A website if you go to look at them. This one, let me know if anyone, I know you can look at it, but also there's quite a bit of text in this one. So if you need me to zoom in or read anything, again, hopefully you've all reviewed it ahead of time, but just let me know.
Oh, that's cool. Oh gosh, that projected ending fund balance for 23. So I guess I got a question, Joey. Do you know why? So they were explaining why we have the negative 1,000 balance there, but why are they projecting an additional negative, what, 4,000? Like, am I reading that right?
No, you are. And I think this is one we can take a look at their program review that because I know we're going to look at those next quarter, but I know those are specific to this year. So this budget report you're looking at here is what was run at the end of last year. And so fiscal 22 is actuals. The 23, I mean, is this year, but this is what they had put in. And so, I mean, you can look and see they have this was a round amount. This was what they budget was 1,809. So there's a possibility that they just left information in there that's not going to be the actuals. It's also possible that they might have, and I don't know this. So I'd say it's something we can ask, and so Jessica can jot it down as one of our questions. But they may have other revenue that they're anticipating bringing in this year.
I'm also noticing they didn't travel last year. I mean, I'm assuming it's COVID and everything.
Yeah. So you can see that's what they had projected. Now, again, that was at the start of the year. They could have come in and updated. I will say some of the budgets are really good about updating their projections at the start of the year. So it's others not as much. And so it's kind of playing catch up throughout the year. I mean, the hard part is when you're talking $4,000 isn't a massive amount, but when you're talking a budget of $13,000, it's a pretty big chunk. What I also don't know, and so again, I think we can put it as a question that we'll send out, is, as they alluded to in their answer, normally the 4-year cycle allows them to carry over or plan. And so they may have intentionally anticipated of having specific larger or more exhibits this year as well, with the intent of knowing they may have fewer the year after or a smaller one on that too. So it's possible, but I think it's a great question we can ask them.
Yeah, other than that, I don't have any questions on this one.
Anyone else have questions, or you want me to move to the next one? And then tell me if I go to the wrong one. I'm hoping the tab's open in order, but I don't know. I don't have the agenda.
Observer next.
Okay, observer. And this little thing is in my way, this share screen. So hold on. I can't see past it. Un momento. There we go. I think Bjorn has a question, Alice.
Oh, yeah, Bjorn.
I think I might have asked this question with the other student media. It was just they mentioned a vacancy that was projected to be filled by January of 2023, and I was wondering if we could ask for an update on that. Might have already asked that, but worth mentioning.
I know you did on a previous one, but I think we can put it because they're all the student media are together. So. Any other questions on Observer?
Yeah, Bjorn?
I mean, they mentioned that they had managed to actually save up a little bit more money this year, which accounts for the projected beginning to ending plus 5,000 odd. And I'm wondering, I don't know if they really address this above, why they're planning to spend more in for this fiscal year, whether it's an equipment thing or what.
I don't think they do, Bjorn, primarily because now again, it may be up there, but I know the questions are specific to the annual report for 22. This just shows because it runs it for us, the 23, so we see for the full quadrennial cycle. So I think all the questions were about last year, not this year. I think, again, when we look at the program review, they should have been touching on and addressing some of that for this year.
Okay, because it looks like they are gonna run over budget for 23, at least projected. Okay.
Brandon?
I was gonna say they did mention that the increased minimum wage is slowly chipping away at their budget, and that could be one of the factors.
Yeah, I know that's hitting across the board right now, huh? Brady?
Just kind of a question relating to the effects of the policy that we passed earlier this year, just having the end of year fund balances transfer back to S&A instead of carrying over. Joey, do you know if that's going, because that is that $45,000, am I reading it correctly, that that's supporting them next year too, that they're planning on?
So are you talking about on this part or something they referenced up above?
No, this part that we're on right now,
Okay.
we're ending with the $45,000 left in their fund balance. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's going to go back to S&A at the end of this year, correct?
So this was last year's, and so last year they ended with 45. At the time the report was ran in the fall, they were projected to end this year with 36,000. At the end of this year, because again we passed this partway through the year, so at the end of this year, whatever the ending fund balance is, and so if this is accurate, that 36,000 is what would be swept back to the S&A reserve general. Yeah.
Read it wrong. Thank you.
Nope, you're good. You're good. Right idea, just different line of what you were looking at.
Still slightly concerned about what they're going to do next year without that $36,000 because it appears that they are relying heavily on that fund balance, but without knowing next year's necessarily so.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions on the Observer? Not seeing any. Joey, do you want to move on to Office of Case Management?
And so this one, I'm going to scroll through you'll see they have an attached annual report. Again, if you've looked at the document, you'll see, because they have a ton of information in there. So I'll go through that, but happy to go back to anything.
Are you sharing it, Joey? I'm not seeing it.
I'm seeing it.
It says on my end that it's sharing.
I see it.
Weird.
Not seeing
Oh.
it.
So some of you are seeing it, some of you are not seeing it. I'm going to stop sharing and I will try sharing again. But
Yeah, it still shows observer to me.
oh, weird. Stop sharing.
Okay, observer went away.
Screen. What is it showing now? Okay.
Yeah, that's Office of Case Management.
Okay. So some of you were seeing the Office of Case Management. So let me go back and I will scroll again. Again, they have the attached report. And so you see, I can happily go back to any of these pieces just for the sake of you all quickly and for the recording. I'll go through this. There we go.
Bjorn?
This is not particularly apropos to the funding, but I noticed they were looking for something to replace PeopleSoft, and I understand that PeopleSoft has had kind of a chilly reception the past couple of years. Seems worth looking into. Can we ask them if this might be something useful for other departments as well? Titanium, I think they called it.
So I can answer that slightly. Titanium is a specific product that's for like medical and counseling and those types of health services, case database thing.
Okay.
It's a great program and software, but would not at all be like PeopleSoft.
Okay.
Yeah. I did forget one thing, and so I'm going to share this here. It's not, I'm thinking of it as I'm looking at case managements. This is general for all of them. One of the things I think as well is when we look at fiscal 23, because I know we keep looking and seeing the negative net resources. One thing I forgot when we started this whole process, if you look at it, the revenue, that's our allocation pieces. You'll see that it's down. That's because that's already built in what, and this is the beginning of the year, so what would have been the 10% reduction. So for their planning, some of these have adjusted and changed. So the revenue part is going to look down, but they had not adjusted expenses. And so by that reduction amount, there's going to be some natural looking like things are in the negative as we look at all of these annual reports, unless they had reached out at the very beginning of the year, which most had not. But also those were not the final numbers. Those got finalized in December, at least for student engagement and success, on where reductions were coming from. And so, for example, case management is one where there was not any reduction in their base allocation, so they did receive the full allocation amount this year. Other areas absorbed that because this is fully funding, as you can see on here, a full-time staff salary position. There are no goods and services.
Yeah, Bjorn?
This came up on a couple of them, but what's in terms of the transfer money, what does intra-fund in mean? And is that something that we have to approve, or is it something that can just happen?
No, that's not something the committee does, and that's one of the questions they get asked. And so I'm going to scroll up. Boom, boom, boom. Right here. So that's where we ask the question to this, because it can be different things, in all honesty. And so it's done typically on the accounting side in general. So there can be a number of things. This one specifically, as you can see on here, that amount was a fund transfer due to the vacation accruals to balance out.
Okay.
So that's a great question. Not all of them have it when you look at these transfer pieces. Some do. The reason we ask is because sometimes that could be a transfer from one department to another department. And so we ask that because as S&A, they really shouldn't be taking, like, we shouldn't take money that's given to case management and they move it to Diversity Equity Center. That should go by us for approval. Accounting transfers like this, where those are normal things that don't have to go by us.
Okay.
Any more questions for Office of Case Management? Going once, going twice. Bjorn, you look deep in thought. Do you have a question? No? Okay, can we move on to the next one then? Office of International Studies and Programs.
Okay, I'm going to share. You all tell me if you see something other than international studies. So it should be sharing now. I can zoom in on it as soon as that little thing goes away.
Yeah, that's international studies. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to just slowly scroll through the whole thing again and then you all tell me at the end. Any questions or things on this one? I mean, it's a pretty small budget and it's a pretty straightforward when you look at it. So there doesn't have to be questions.
Yeah, Brady?
Just curious as to why for the 23 actuals, there appears to be no programming budget, since that's what's like specifically, I mean, it all affects students because all these professional staff and other things, they do things for students. But that just is a little bit, like, is that just where they decided to take their 10% cut? I'm just concerned as to why there's just no programming coming out, if that's part of what we originally allocated for.
I think that's a great question. Again, we can write down. In looking at it, I see two pieces. One is, again, there's a little bit of the reduction of it, and their program is there, but also I see there's an increase in the student wages, which could have to do with the minimum wage increases. And so it may be that their decision was to keep the positions they have. Maybe they're getting money or funding from somewhere else programmatically. I think that's a good question of why is it completely. I mean, you can see goods and services went from just under $6,000 to under $400 for the year.
Right, and I definitely, like, if they decided to keep positions because of wage increases, that makes sense, and I support it. I just, hopefully, I also know there's been some movement around that area too, so like most of the university. So like, I just want to make sure that programming in some form is still happening, just where is it coming from? So.
Any other questions for this one here? The Department of International Studies. Going once, going twice. Let's move on to the next one then. On to Office of Student Involvement.
Is it showing student involvement?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Thank
it
you.
is.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yes.
So this one, just for reference for you all, it's Office of Student Involvement. The reason the name at the top has this is before the last funding cycle, it was funded under the name Campus Life. They had moved to student involvement before, but because of the previous funding cycle, they had to keep Campus Life. It is now student involvement, but some of these are carryovers that people put both names when it comes to us as S&A. So that way there's continuity of looking back.
Yeah, Brady?
Joey, just to be clear, this budget is still executed by Slice overall though, correct? It's just one of their many budgets.
Yes, it is. Yep. Yeah, because the funding, and again, some of you are aware of this, these funding came in before the restructure of Slice into the entity has happened last year after these had come in. And so these were separate. There was an Office of Student Involvement. And similarly, you'll see there's Campus Activities was a separate entity. And then Center for Leadership and Community Engagement was a separate entity, which is now Slice, all of those together. So yes.
Yeah, Brandon?
Just making sure I understand this properly. The CWU transfer intrafunding, basically their net resources at the end of the year. It's showing up as, yeah, they're saying they have a positive balance, and on the balance sheet it obviously says negative 17,371. That's just a miss. That's just, on the financial statements. That's just an error, right?
So I think, and I think this warrants a question back. So the hard part is when you look at it, their projected beginning fund balance was a negative 17,000. So that got transferred in. Now it says on here, it was due to an end of year vacation or accrual to balance out. But as you can see, the budget was actually zeroed out with the exception of that. So if you didn't have that in there, they would have ended the year at a 0 within it. And so the comment about positive fund balance in the year as a result of salary savings and conservative spending, we might want to ask them to articulate that more, because that doesn't seem to reflect. The other part, and I think asking this question, I think this was probably a leftover from the previous year, but this first question was talking about, oh no, that would have been the right year in fiscal year 22. Never mind. This is me looking at it within those. And so that's the other part, is with the vacancy in this position, they still would have ended the year at a 0 perfectly. So, and this is with the transfer in, they didn't transfer money out. So not sure if there's more of an explanation if this was coming in to assist, but again, they would have zeroed out already. So. Again, if you look, their total revenue, 259,882, total expenses, 259,882 is the exact. Which I know looks nice. I will say, for those of you who've never dealt with the budget, that's not normal to see it spent to the exact dollar. Usually, and sometimes that's because there's balancing of, we're going to offset this with this aspect or assist here within this. Great question, Brandon, or great eye.
Are there any other questions for this one? Do you want to start moving over to Office of Undergraduate Research?
It says it's loading my screen share. Okay, now it says you all can see it, so I'll zoom in. You all see source and Office of Undergraduate Resource.
Yep.
Okay. And I'll provide some historical piece on this, similar to the other one, just so you all know. Previous to this funding cycle, Source and Office of Undergraduate Resource, they're both housed in the same place, but they were two different base funding requests. In the last base funding cycle, they put it in as one base funding request. So if you look back, you will see Source was its own previous. Now in our current funding cycle, they are one base funded entity together.
Yeah, Bjorn?
For what it's worth, I don't really have any questions on this one. I just thought it was worthwhile complimenting them. This is very detailed and helpful.
Yeah, no, I think they did a great job of outlining. They were one of the ones, and they outlined it very well and succinctly. I would say I appreciate that it's outlined and clear there. That definitely had a major impact both on the source and the undergraduate research due to COVID and the restrictions and the change in modalities. So.
Any questions for this one? All right, let's move on to pep band.
Says it's loading. Okay. GLC pep band. I see you nodding, Alice. Awesome.
Yarn?
They mentioned the potential cancellation of events which will affect student employment. I'd be interested to hear how that will affect student employment because it's not terribly intuitive to me.
Again, we can write it down as a question. If I can answer that. It's because the students are paid for the hours they work at the events. And so if the event is canceled, I believe that's what they're saying, is not that it would be elimination of this position, but you're not going to be working the 3 or 4 hours because that event is now canceled. So
Brandon?
I guess a good question would be like, if there were any events that they had, because there's no salary expense or anything for students, and for 40 paid position for 2022, nothing happened yet. That seems a little interesting, but
I think it's a great question that I was hoping someone was going to ask, because you can see their expenses all hit travel and a little bit of programming. Now, when you look at the 23, the plan, there's no travel and it's all in the salary. And so what were these actually paid positions and they got paid as student employees, or is it just paying for the travel? Because that's what it looks like on this one, unless it was input incorrectly. But if they were getting paid directly from it, it would be on the other line.
Anyone else got any questions for pep band? Not seeing any. Puts us on to publicity center.
And it's loading. Can you all see Publicity Center? Awesome.
Yep.
I can zoom in. I was just trying to show the whole budget piece on the one page. But if anyone needs me to zoom in, let me know.
Brandon?
in their statement, they said that they canceled travel plans, etc. And they're using but they're also talking about how they're going to have more at the end of the year. So I guess I just would like to know when, like, why did they cancel all of it? I know they said that so they can increase student wages and absorb some operational costs, but I mean, I hope that at some point they don't. They just never get to go anywhere ever again.
Yarn?
Kind of related to that one, there's a mention to a continued spending restriction by our administration. I'd be interested to know I don't have the org chart memorized who this would have come from, and if it was just one of those misconceptions we had last year in the panic.
So I can answer that question for you, Bjorn, and then you all can choose if you want, and if they're interested to acknowledge the public comment or the gallery for questions, because we do have the director of the Publicity Center present. We can also send it later, but to answer that first question, I mean, it was within student success, Bjorn. It's the same as some of the other units directive that was given from that, not misconception from S&A, but from a supervisory administrative decision within that division on across the board, not just S&A, but they were very much on about S&A for trying to figure out where reductions and things would come from. So that directive for spending restrictions was coming from that administration. Similar to, again, what we've talked about before, but I guess I totally just put it out there as an option for Lola to respond, but I don't actually know if Lola is able to chat and respond, or if she's just in a spot where she can listen right now. So
Yeah.
we see her now. Okay. So if you did want, Brandon, potentially you could ask the question if you all would like to recognize Lola to answer it.
Yeah, Brandon, you're more than welcome to ask.
All right. I was just, I guess I was just a little bit curious as to, I know this budget's only for like projecting 2023 or anything, but are there any future plans to try and get back into traveling and workshops and stuff?
Thank you for asking the question. Yes, we would love to. We couldn't do any travel since COVID hit. We actually had people lined up to travel. And of course, all of that got canceled. And we were in the same situation last year where we couldn't travel because of COVID restrictions, uncertainty, and it just was not going to happen. On the submissions for creative award competitions, we haven't been able to do that for quite a while. When we were doing that on an annual basis, it was awesome because the students were winning awards. Literally every year we submitted something, except for one, we've won awards. So that's pretty awesome. I think the other thing was we could not purchase any equipment. That has loosened up now. So we did just purchase a new camera for video and hope to replace some very old computers in the office. But yeah, any other questions? Happy to answer.
Not that I can think of, but thank you very much for your comments.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Do we have any more questions for this one here? Seeing no questions, that moves us on to Pulse.
Loading now. See Pulse? Okay, great.
Any thoughts or questions about this one? Brandon?
Not really any questions. I think they did a pretty good job just detailing what they're currently facing and how they're addressing certain issues. I hope that I can bounce back to having a positive ending fund balance at some point, or if at least nothing else, a neutral. But I'm from what it looks like, the measures they're taking are the best they can do. So.
Yeah, I don't have any questions for this one either. Looks going once, going twice. Then let's move on to the Sarah Spurgeon Art Gallery.
Okay, should be loading. Yep, you'll see it. Great.
Yep. Yeah, Bjorn.
Um, regarding the negative balance, you mentioned student salaries and benefits have increased, and at this point, when this was written, will increase. As when we're reading this, have increased. How's that going to affect student employment, or how has it affected student employment at the gallery?
Great question. Well, and I can say this in general for you all. This is a piece because it's been going up. And so again, this was for last year. As you all may know, minimum wage went up again this year. There's a whole set category. This is one of the challenges that we have been talking about. And similarly on the state end, minimum wage also impacts some of our professional staff salaries and the state instituting cost of living adjustments. Those cost of living adjustments specifically for our areas do not come with the funding. And so what that means is the cost for employees, both student and professional, go up. However, this is what we've talked with the budget managers for a number of years now. Given the financial situation we're in, we can't just give everyone more base allocation to offset those, which means having to make some strategic and tough pieces on, like, does that mean you're providing either fewer positions or fewer hours, or are you having to look at reducing or limiting some of the programmatic choices or travel or things like that? And so I know we're talking specifically about the art gallery, but I think it's important because that impacts all of our units that have employees, which most of them have salaries, whether it be professional or students. And it just keeps going up while we do not have more funding to give them to offset it. So.
Any more questions from anybody? No? Not seeing any questions coming up. That would open us to the next call for public comment. So I would like to open the floor once more for anyone to make a public comment.
You all did a great job reviewing those and sticking within our less than 1 hour time limit. So thank you. And thank you for making it for the extra meeting this week. Oh, I do have a public comment, and maybe it'll segue to Brady having a public comment. If you all know of any other students who are interested in the S&A committee, but also any other committees, please send them to Brady. I know I've sent one to Brady already. As a reminder, this was a while ago, Brady. I see the look on your face. We'll touch base. We do have 3 vacant positions right now, student positions with that. And then assuming nothing has changed for either of them, we do have 2 current members who are set to graduate at the end of this quarter, I believe, from what was shared earlier. So that may mean we have a couple of these on there. So Brady put his email in there. If you know of anyone who's interested, send them to Brady. We would love to have them. Also, because again, we're going to be going over program reviews in the spring. I anticipate we may get some requests from base funded units. Some might be supplemental, but some might be asking to be able to keep some of the money that's supposed to sweep back for various reasons. And they'll have to provide some strong justification, but it will be important that we have a number of voices. Otherwise, there's just the 4 remaining student members. So please help spread the word and help Brady out.
Yes, thank you, Joey, because all the other functions of my job tend to take a committees take a backseat a lot of the time, but yes, we very much need people to serve on. Honestly, most of our committees are filled luckily throughout the university, which is really cool. I took a look yesterday. Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, but mainly it's just ASCW and S&A that we need those committees filled. So, but yes, anybody interested in S&A or anything to do with the student union, please send them my way. We are also still looking for possibly a director of governmental affairs and a Senate speaker. So if you know anybody that would be interested in either of those positions, which are executive board positions within ASCWU, please also send them my way. So yeah.
And Brady, you were right. The only other one is the Board of Academic Appeals. Might need a couple more students, but that's about it.
All right, that about wraps us up for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for making it for this emergency meeting or
We have to motion
virtual
to
meeting.
close.
Yeah. I would like to entertain a motion to wrap up today's meeting.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Right here.
Awesome. We got a motion from Brady and a second from Brandon. Thank you so much, everyone, for making it. Back to our regularly scheduled programming next time.
Yep. See you all next week. Have a great
Bye.
one.